It was piling up in YouTube though. Okay, it says we're live, but YouTube does not yet tell us. So we'll have the... Hey, we're live! Look at that. Magic stuff. Hi everyone. Welcome to the end of April. Isn't that a little bit terrifying?
That's nuts.
Um, yeah, so welcome to the end of April ID update. We've got like a lot to talk about today. There's been tech stuff, there's been industry stuff, there have been reports. I'm saying this as if I've done any sort of preparatory work. I'm not going to lie, mostly we're relying on Joey today.
That's okay. I got stuff. I have stuff. I have stuff for you, so I'm feeling good.
Fantastic. Well, in the meantime, as always, I'm Tom,
And I'm Joe.
and let's roll that intro. There's only one place for the breaking news in the world of instructional design. The ID Update with Tom and Joe. All the news you never knew you never needed. Only on IDT. There we go. Everything works. Look at that. We're on for a
Love
winner
it.
this week. Yeah, so, I mean, I guess we've kind of put out some stuff probably for the first time before the show this time round. I've asked people for what they're investing in. I got some unexpected answers that we'll discuss later on. But first things first, the important stuff. Joey, what are you drinking?
All right. So for today, I get to do this because the wife is like working real late, and she's allergic to strawberries. So I get to do this.
Okay.
This is what's it called? This is the Matador from Black Project. These guys, they're out of Denver, Colorado. They used to be called Former Future. It was really cool. They were kind of like steampunk, like Magnificent Men and their flying machines themed.
Nice.
So their bar was literally an airplane wing.
That's very cool.
It was real neat. But not that they went under or anything like that, but they decided that they love doing wild ales and there wasn't enough of a market in that. So yeah, this is raspberry, strawberry, and cacao. It's a sour ale, and yeah, they do cool stuff. You can see they still have their airplane theme in there
Oh
with their
yeah,
paper
yeah.
airplanes. Um,
Nice.
and then for the glass, because I got to do it. It's my own little plug. I made my own glass for my other channel, my hobby channel, for Text and
No,
Drafts.
they're awesome, man.
So
Good
I'm a fan.
stuff.
All right, what you got?
Do you know what? I unfortunately discovered another website for buying beer on recently.
Oh no.
But they don't sell like bottles, they sell boxes. Um, so we've had some deliveries in our household. And I got 2 boxes of like a Belgian variety pack.
Oh,
So today I'll be enjoying. I don't speak Belgian, which is the only problem with these beers. Um, Phonetically, it's affligem, but that's almost
all right.
certainly not how it's pronounced. If it is, well, it's just not. Let's be honest.
Yeah,
Um,
I would hope not.
but it's the
That's awesome
second
though.
bottle of this I've had, and it is delicious. It's surprisingly because like Belgian beers tend to be quite heavy,
Yeah,
but this is really light, really crisp, remarkably easy to drink, which is fine until you realise it's like 9.5%. Um,
perfect. No, I want
so
in on
it's
this.
yes, it's delicious, but when you think, oh, I could have 3 or 4 of those of an evening, and then you look at that and think, oh, maybe I should not have 3 or 4 of those of an evening.
I'm kind of jealous because I have a monthly beer club thing that my parents-in-law granted me. So it's not as elaborate as Belgians. It's usually IPAs and sadness. At least that's what this last box was. I had
Mm.
this IPA that was I can't drink it. It's like drinking lemon juice. It was
Oh,
so bad. So, but I
I've
would love a box of Belgians. That'd
well,
be incredible.
well, the company I've got them from is Beowulf, spelt with a U rather than an O. I'm not sure if they're global or whether they're just UK based. Um,
I'm gonna have to look it up. Like
but
I
yeah,
need more
no,
beer in the house.
that's I've got the opposite problem, but unfortunately, shipping it, I think I'm almost certain it will be illegal anyway. But it will also be quite
Yeah.
pricey, I should imagine. Um,
Do what I do. Say it's olive oil.
oh, that's
There you go.
marvelous. Um,
Usually works. Anyway,
cool. Yes.
here, as you crack
Cheers.
it, you're just gonna drink it right out of the bottle.
Yes, because I left my glass on the other side of the room, and I'm all kind of nestled in with cables at this point, and
Okay,
unplugging stuff is going to be problematic. So it's going to
that's
be
fair.
bottle, unfortunately.
All
Uh,
right, I haven't tried this before, so wow. Okay, that's exactly what I expected, and it's fantastic.
oh,
All right,
good.
I see you. How much is that? Let's see how this is. Legally, you have to tell me. I don't know what the ABV is.
Oh, ooh, sinister.
I guess we'll
Um,
find out by the end of the day, won't
well,
we?
absolutely.
Kind of like last
Quick.
time.
Oh, yeah, quick early stream shout out to Luke, who's in the
What's up, Luke?
audience. And he's popped into a few of our streams now, so thank you very much for sticking around. Um, I will be speaking more about Luke later on, actually. Luke's launching an awesome free resource for the community,
Oh
which
yeah,
I'm totally going to plug as my kind of great resource found for the month. So
that's
that's
awesome.
really exciting stuff. But
Very
I
cool.
guess really first big topic that I said we were going to discuss is it's the start of a new tax year, which sadly for me
Mhm.
means tax returns. But for more excitingly for L&D, it means it's time to start spending some money. This is the time of year where you get your budget and you feel like you'd like to cry a little bit because you have no idea how you're going to deliver what the business wants for so little money. And you usually get a helpful response like, it's all about being smarter with our resources and we need to do more with less. As if this
Yeah.
was somehow just oh, well, of course, why didn't I think of that moment? So I thought it'd be really cool to kind of have a bit of a chat, and anyone in the comments, please get involved about what we think are good investments, where we think money's going to get wasted this year. I've got some ideas there, and as I said, I reached out on Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn and other strange places to find out what people are spending money on. A lot of people are spending money on VR, it would seem.
Okay. Everyone's
Yeah.
trying to make that the craze.
And only in interesting, anyone that came to me with that this month, I kind of asked them, tell me, because I'm on record as being a bit VR's no good for learning in its current form. So I was
Mhm.
interested. About 7 people mentioned it, and I asked every single one of them. One of them came back to me with the why and an explanation. Um,
Okay.
and of all people, I shouldn't be surprised, it was Cara North.
Of course.
Um,
We love
exactly.
Kara.
It, yes. Which is, I'm not going to lie, I was a little surprised the VR was her response
Okay.
initially. But then she answered in an engineering space. Said I think it's semiconductors that they work in, and
Mhm.
it's excruciatingly expensive. The materials are, especially at the minute, ridiculously expensive to get hold of.
Right.
So they're looking to use VR to reduce the cost of training with those engineering materials, which is interesting because I've always considered cost to be one of the main barriers to VR. Um, but I guess an interesting view on how the industry completely changes the value proposition, I suppose.
I think that's a good use for it. Like, remember, I mean, when VR first came out, everybody was thinking of, oh, how great would it be to be able to do like role play in
Mm.
VR and have that be the case. And it was a lot more kind of soft skills, practical things. And that doesn't make any sense to me.
No.
But yeah, I could see it in engineering.
Mm.
I can see it in a couple spaces where yeah, that it makes a lot of sense for those resources. I think that's kind of niche. I don't know if there's going to be enough people wanting to invest the technology or invest
Mm.
the money to make the technology awesome to hit one niche market. Um, while other companies look and say VR doesn't really serve our needs.
Mm.
So I don't know. So if you guys are a developer and VR developer, there it sounds like you got a niche market.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
still
for
not
sure.
convinced. I'm
I
not
think
convinced.
I
But
think a lot of the drive for the technology is going to come from gaming and military.
mm-hmm.
Those are the two spaces where undoubtedly VR has value. And they will, as in fairness, as they have with everything, even e-learning authoring tools, really, they're 3 or 4 years behind your kind of like accessible web creators, right?
Mhm.
So now we were looking at WordPress, and then we got Articulate and Captivate in that generation. Now we're looking at Wix and Squarespace, and we're just waiting for the generation of authoring tools that follows that line.
Yeah.
So I think we might see the same, hopefully, with VR. I would love to be proved wrong on VR because the technology I think is awesome. From a gaming perspective, great fun, awesome tech, exciting from a technological point of view. Just doesn't make sense from a commercial perspective in
Mhm.
terms of
Yeah,
learning.
I really need to get VR. I need to get a headset. I've done VR. I've played VR, but
Yeah,
it is a cool experience.
it is.
It's a
Yeah.
weird one, but I mean, that goes into, going into that kind of goes into one of the problems that you and I have talked about, I think even on the show, was
Mm,
the scalability of that.
yeah.
Like, that's great tech, but that's one headset. You get to train one person once. Being able to do that 50, 60 times, is that really worth it? And if you only need to do it like 15, 20 people, is that big of an investment worth it?
This and is
I
there a
think it's a
tangible
balancing act.
improvement?
Huh?
And is there an improvement? Is it actually better to train in VR than in person? If it's going to be more, if it's not going to be cheaper, does it actually yield better results? And so far, the studies kind of say no, not really.
Yeah, and I'm
Um,
also thinking, gosh, if I'm an engineer, if I'm doing engineering, that means that chances are what I'm working on is fairly proprietary, which means
mm,
that I need to hire a specific company to develop a VR training program. Then I need to have the equipment to do that, and that needs to be cheaper on top of the delivery and top of everything else to actually, validate and make sure it works and deliver that training. That needs to be cheaper than paying for the materials, as well as everything else. It needs to be more efficient, needs to be more functional. It needs to be maintainable, sustainable. It needs to do all those things.
yeah,
I
it's
see from one perspective that that stuff's good, but man, the more I'm thinking as a project manager,
oh, it'd be a nightmare. Like,
whatever.
it's,
There's six more out there. There are six more people out there that are willing to vouch for it. So help me from a project management perspective. Be a VR trainer for sec.
that's it. I mean, if anyone watching wants to pop in the comments the commercial and business case for saying why as a learning function you should spend X amount of money on VR. But
Mm.
I'd be very interested to hear actually, um, if for nothing else than just to see where people are. So for you then, what's the next year? What are you thinking are the directions of investment and what you'd like to see us do?
There's a difference between like to see us do and what I think is actually going to happen.
Absolutely.
Um, so what I'd like to see us do is invest in smaller tools. Um, I've been a champion of that for ages. Of like, I want to see storyline. I want to see some different, more unique, and more creative and interesting things. Especially given that so much is more easily accessible nowadays. I'd like to have the tools also be fairly accessible, and the storyline subscriptions just not. Um, it's just not.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm learning this as I'm jumping into freelancing, which we will talk about, I'm sure. Like,
Yes.
okay, that's an expense. But so that's what I like to see is an investment in smaller tools and some more cool, innovative, accessible ways for the influx of new instructional designers and trainers that we have that have entered the market in the last year. That's not going to happen, I don't think. I think what's going to happen is all those people who suddenly had to convert all of their materials to e-learning are going to start talking about LMSs. And I think that they're all going to get scared into having some sort of structure for all the stuff they just kind of vomited out really quickly in 2020 because of
Mm.
COVID. And that's going to, I expect to see some random surge of LMS or some sort of content curation. So that's what I think is going to happen. I think it's the natural follow up. Um, Especially since it's still kind of the base answer. It's like, well, how did you manage your training program? LMS is still kind of the go to.
Yes. No, I have a horrible feeling you might be right, and we'll see. Either that or already actually I'm starting to see a huge demand for we want to get back to in-person training, which is
Okay.
incredibly depressing. Um, from a kind
Oh.
of a couple of weeks ago, I think I was kind of thinking maybe this has maybe from a purely our industry perspective, here's the silver lining. Business is finally going to accept that it is time to move on and accept digital, not as a, oh well, if we can't do it in person, we'll do it digital, but
Mhm.
be genuinely digital first, rather than just using it as a word to make your business sound modern.
Yeah.
Um,
I
Apparently
mean, I also
not.
see, yeah. I mean, on top of it, I also see kind of an influx of individual content creators creating their own courses to
Mm,
sell. Um, so my I'll talk about this when we get into market, but I'm looking specifically at Udemy right now, which
mm,
now this is back in October. They announced they scaled from a million revenue every year to 100 million recurring revenue every year, and I'm sure last year helped like crazy. Um, and I know that I have a lot of friends in the industry who have said, I lost jobs and finding it was a pain in the butt, and I'm just gonna create my own course and get that passive income. And even I've been considering it. And I'm just like, this feels saturated. Like it just, I started
yeah.
looking into it, I was like, wow, this got saturated quick.
I think I'm in two minds about the whole popularity of it. And my kind of thought pattern is that I love the concept of people creating courses based on their knowledge, their experience, putting it out to the community, and I have no issue with people charging for those. I think that's fine. You
Mhm.
create a
Yeah.
product, you bill for it. I know some people give them away for free. That's awesome. But you say if you're looking for passive income, I'm not solely against it. But much like creating a course in a corporate setting or creating any product, your product only, to me, from my perspective, only has value if it does something that no one else is doing.
Mhm.
And there seem to be, purely from, again, from an our industry perspective, if I want to find an online course to become an instructional designer, there are quite a few to choose from.
There's just
And
tons.
yeah, and I'm not convinced many of them are, particularly great. Not to be too horrible about it, but having, out of interest, gone, oh, I'll sign up to this and I'll have a look at that and I'll have a look at the bit there. There are
Mhm.
people who, have been an instructional designer for a year and are now making a course on how to be an instructional designer.
Mhm.
Now, I will kind of discuss later on because we're going to look at some interesting report results. I know about how
Mhm.
I don't think experience is the be all and end all, but similarly, I mean,
Yeah.
I've been doing this for what, 5 years now. I don't feel
Mhm.
sufficiently experienced and skilled to create a course on how to be an instructional designer.
Yeah. I mean,
Certainly not on my
I've
own.
done it for 10. Yeah, I've done it for 10, and most of my stuff is gonna be like, cross your fingers half the time. Hope that you work with people who understand.
Well, that's
Um,
just because you're honest. You're supposed to say that you always know what you're doing, and when it
yeah,
goes
lesson
wrong,
all
it's
right,
the
yeah,
learner's
that's true.
fault.
It's very true. So if you're a brand new instructional designer, learn from my 10 years of mistakes. Lesson one is don't be honest about what you do. It's gonna get you into
Absolutely.
trouble.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah,
No,
no,
I
I
thought about
just
it.
yeah.
I actually have a I do have an idea for when I haven't actually seen out in the world for a course that's I would actually kind of like to see, which it's still in the space of like learn how to instructional design,
Hmm.
but it's not really for people looking to get into the industry. I was kind of thinking like there's not really anything for those managers and those business owners who have to train anyway. Like it's just
Yeah.
I have a small shop. I need to educate people. Nobody's really talking to them and saying, "Hey, what are some important things that could help, like that will help with retention?" And then, why would it be valuable to bring a little bit of learning practice into what you do? It's like, oh, so you don't have to come in every day to repeat the same questions over and over. And how do you solve some of that? So that's kind of the idea
That's
that
cool.
I had. I don't think anybody's talking to the new businesses, so
No, I
that
like
might be.
that. That's cool. But yeah, in the meantime, Udemy certainly well looked after. It's a nice full space.
Yeah.
It's so I guess that kind of brings us on to, I guess, maybe that's maybe where we think the industry's going. Um, I mean, I found it quite interesting speaking to people this month about, what's your big investment for the year. Um, and a lot of people seemed to be talking about tools and licenses and things like this.
Mhm.
Um, no one without prompting spoke about development of their team. Um,
Shoot, that's fair.
yeah, which, and I find this to be a common thing in the learning and development industry. It's what we do, but we don't tend to do it for ourselves, if that makes sense.
You know what's so
Um,
wild about that is that, like, people say they're not investing in their team and stuff like that, and I'm just thinking about how much freelance has exploded at the same time. That feels like a conflict. That feels backwards. Um,
yeah, it's a funny old thing because I didn't realize kind of until I guess really until I went freelance is that your personal development is probably the single most important investment you make in any given year. Um,
mhm,
and it doesn't necessarily need to be a huge financial investment, but it should certainly be a consideration.
right.
And yet, I think instead we tend to think a lot about, let's say, product, services, licenses, and a lot less about what are the things that we're going to do and pay for this year to make our team better at their jobs.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm,
and
more
again,
people is never the answer anyone wants to hear.
well, no, this is it, and I think again we're going to look at. I think we've got Devlin Peck's report from hiring
Mhm.
managers, haven't we? I was
Yeah, that
reading
came out
that.
recently.
Um,
That was really interesting.
yeah, I'm not going to lie. I read that and got a little bit depressed about the industry. Uh, it's like Devlin's, as always, has done an amazing job of gathering information. His reports are really interesting. The one about
Mhm.
what instructional designers get paid also made me really freaking depressed, um,
Yeah.
but
I think the one
certainly
that
made me consider my rates anyway.
I think the one that blew my mind was the in-demand. So there's a question on this. We'll get into this more in detail,
Mm.
everyone. But there's a question specifically on which in-demand skill do you find is most often lacking when hiring instructional
Yeah,
designers? And the top one was ability to apply ID theory in science. And I've had a lot of conversations with people about applying ID in science and how important that actually is. I was amazed that that was about a quarter of responses. I don't know how I feel about that, especially given that the next one is visual design. Like
yeah,
that. Mm, um, mm. But I mean, it's not. I guess it's not like rank them from 1 to 5. It's whatever your top one was.
yeah. But part of
So
me
that
thinks if if out of all the people who responded to that, those are the top two that are lacking. Like, so the industry can't design effective learning and can't make things look good.
you know,
Um,
what's especially depressing about that question. And I really, so this is where I really hope that I'm wrong and that the LMSs are going to
mm,
skyrocket. Number 8, the eighth rank was LMS admin. Like, oh no.
why are you hiring instructional designers to manage your LMS? That's not their job.
Um, it's a spicy one.
Oh dear.
I like seeing project management up there. I don't think that there's enough love given to the how much project management is done as an ID.
Mm,
Um, I think this is why this is why out of 10 years I still get in fights with people in my industry because as an ID you really are more of a project manager than anyone gives you credit for. Um,
absolutely.
because the only way you do your job is you assess the stakes of basically everyone around you. Um, raise his hand.
Yeah.
Uh, Grateful. Um, so yeah, I that's one of the things that has been a little bit of a challenge in some of the places I've been at is, hey, I see you as a stakeholder, I see what you have, I've got to do risks and constraints, and I need to process all this stuff. And my leaders are like, "Where's your outline?" It's like, no, you do not want this right now. Uh,
Yeah.
you want me to do to figure all this stuff out first, and we pay
Yeah,
the
and
price if we
that's
don't.
well, absolutely, yeah. And I think that there's kind of two elements to that as well. There's that constant conflict between I think instructional designers broadly, partly because of that element of project management that goes into what we do, and partly because we know the importance of what we do.
Mhm.
We don't like that, as you say, the outlines or the early alpha
Right.
developments or designs going out.
Mhm.
But I think over the last year, there's been almost a glorification of how quickly can you pump out content.
Yeah.
Lots of people going, I'm so proud we've launched, in the last 3 months, we've converted over 100 courses to digital. In the back of my head, all I can think is, wow, they must be crap. Um, it's, if you can create 100 high quality digital learning pieces in 3 months, I mean, hats off. Physically,
Yeah,
how you've done it, I don't know. Um, like that would be an incredible feat of instructional design ability, and I just don't buy it.
yeah.
Um,
I do kind of wish that one of the options on this list, because it's always it's here's another one that's never talked about is like, and I don't even know what you would call it, like feedback getter and
mm,
understander. Because it never comes up, right? As a trainer, you just throw it out there and you're done. So you can say all you can say that they created 100 courses and I bet they're all crap. I bet you no one's going to challenge that because nobody's getting feedback. Nobody's doing surveys. Nobody's looking at tangible benefits. Nobody's comparing that to what they had before and seeing if anything's improving. That's
once
another struggle
again,
I've always had in my
yeah,
career. Is
it's a big hole where data should be. Um,
yeah,
and I think interestingly, I think that loops in with that idea where people aren't able to kind of explain and use learning science and theories.
mhm,
Part of that is because we're not getting the data to challenge and back things up. We don't know
mhm.
whether we've correctly applied something because there's just, oh, that's, I'm sorry, that's really distracted me. Q, it's really nice that you've joined the live stream, but that is an
Feedback gatherer.
awful joke. I Likert it. Like a Likert
Oh,
scale.
buddy.
That's
All right. Cheer. I mean, we don't like you, but cheers to that.
I never thought I would be part of a channel where the comments would get statistics jokes included. That's not good, is it? That's
I hate that I actually understand that in full. I'm like,
it's yeah,
oh,
that's oh well, never mind.
good
Um
job.
so I've even forgot I was saying that's how good that was. I'm gonna have to find a way to use that in the future. But yeah,
Feedback gatherer and not getting data, and that our data
exactly,
sucks.
yes. So yeah, I think that it goes back to an over focus on technology, tool, and not enough focus on your people, their ability to understand the science and the techniques, their inability to communicate with their audience, to gather data and feedback and analyze it, those human skills. We can forget, do you know what? Let's just dive into the report because I think we've already jumped into it so much.
That's
Um,
true.
and I'll tell you,
That's
when I
true.
said I got really depressed, and I got really depressed with what the top skill was for an
Yeah.
instructional
First, let
designer.
me give some
Go
context
for it.
real quick.
Go for
Yeah.
it.
Um. So just so everybody knows what we're talking about at this point, Devlin Peck, cool content creator, awesome guy, did a instructional designer hiring manager survey. He interviewed 122 hiring, or he got 122 responses from hiring managers asking them a slew of questions, which we're going to talk about. This thing released just recently. It's kind of the 2021 thing. So we shared one of them. But yeah, Tom, if you want to, if you had some thoughts, since I mean you're depressed, so
Yeah, I mean
let's
this.
go with
That's
why.
I'm using that word very glibly, and I apologise for that. But it was just one of those things that I saw it and my heart just sank. Because the top skill that these hiring managers feel an instructional designer needs is e-learning development. The top skill, not for an e-learning developer, not for a specifically
Mhm.
digital instructional designer, but just for an instructional designer to have is e-learning development. The
Yeah,
examples being Storyline and Captivate.
of
Under,
course.
underneath that, we have communication skills and ability to apply ID theory. But the fact that the first is the tool, it to me in one moment, I looked at it and just thought that is why the industry is the way it is.
You know, the
We
graphic designer in me looks at the fact that visual design is number 4 by a long shot. Like it's
It's not even close.
74.3% is puts e-learning development as number 1. 35.6% have say visual design is in their top 3. So I'm gonna have a functional storyline that looks like garbage.
Pretty
Um
much. And we're again, and then we see project manager at fifth.
Yeah,
Um,
that's. I'm trying to think of how I would do this.
yeah, don't get me wrong. I think there's a there's obviously a whole slew of ways of looking at looking at these results, but just off the cuff of it, to see if what I would describe as all the instructional design skills come after the e-learning developers skill set, um,
Right.
just shows a fundamental shift in what in what being an instructional designer now means in terms of job title.
Yeah.
So,
So
for
what are your three?
instance, so my three would be ability to apply idea theory and science would be top. Probably communication skills would be second. Um, I'm torn between visual design and project management, purely because I would argue visual design actually sits more with developers and designers than it does with instructional designers.
Mhm.
But it would be a far narrower gap.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I mean after that, things like business acumen, to me that's a very broad and vague topic.
Yeah, that's fair.
Um, and you could argue whether or not an instructional designer needs that, or whether that's more of a senior instructional designer or an L&D
Mhm.
manager role, really, at that point,
Yeah,
if you're worrying about the business and the sort of commercial aspects.
I'd
um,
agree with
i
that.
am I am pleased though to see, I must say, LMS administration very near the bottom. um, LMS administrators deal with LMS administration.
Yes.
You do not want to, in my opinion, it's all my opinion, of course. You should not hire an instructional designer deliberately to purely administer your LMS. It's a huge waste of a skill set.
Right.
Um, Again, it's only my opinion, and based on my experience of having been hired as an instructional designer and then been asked to administer an LMS, and kind of wanted to throw myself out of a window because of it. Because you just sit there going, "Yes, I will now enroll your users." Woo.
Yeah.
Um,
And then do all the I don't know my password and I can't find my students and where's my curriculum and where's my link?
this is it. And from a commercial
And can I get a
aspect,
copy of the PowerPoint?
yeah, you just fire those people the moment they ask the question. You just respond with a P45 or whatever the US equivalent is to a "get the hell out of my building" paperwork. Um,
I think nowadays it's a text. No, I'm kidding.
oh,
I don't
okay,
know what it is anymore.
nice. But yeah, so that was my immediate response. That could, and I think that was my immediate response largely because it was the first question that really delivered some information. Like
Mm,
the first two provide, I would argue, some context to who's responded to the survey.
yep.
Um, I think overwhelmingly corporate, which I think is still the case for ID.
Yeah.
You see, what is it, 70% corporate training environments.
Mhm.
Um, you obviously already mentioned the lacking part. Um, I think the thing I found interesting was that there's a sort of ID theory and visual design were in the upper half of what they looked for, and they're in
Mhm.
the upper half of lacking. The only one that kind of disappeared was e-learning development, meaning that
Yeah.
everyone's got it. Um,
Yeah.
uh,
I mean, well, all right.
there's
So I don't actually know. I don't know. I don't know if this is the case with you. The way that it's always been approached to me as far as being going to instructional design is that that's kind of a step higher. So like I started as basically a trainer facilitating. I created content, but thinking about the bigger picture was basically the next step in my career. So I
hmm.
naturally had the e-learning development. I don't know, is that the same with you? Is that how you see it?
I don't know, I think it really depends. So I mean, I kind of cut my L&D teeth in a business where you were all roles to all things. You were trainer, ID, developer, and anything else they could ask you to do that week, kind of thing. And you
That's
ended, and
fair.
yeah, and we kind of carved ourselves out a role of being more, by the end, instructional designers.
Mhm.
Largely because people didn't want me to stand in front of them and train them anymore. It was very effective, but I didn't buy into the "you should like your trainer" nonsense. I bought into the "you will remember and you will learn, but you will probably hate me by the end of it"
Yeah.
side of it. When people go, "But this makes me uncomfortable," the response was, "Good, it should." Um, So so I guess that kind of changes it. But for me, I've always kind of felt that the the best setups that I've come across have very distinct roles between these are our instructional designers, these are our visual creatives with very specialist skills in
Mhm.
drawing, animating, whatever it might be, and these are our developers that live, sleep, and breathe the development of content, be that in code,
Mm,
storyline, whatever it might
mhm.
be. Meaning
Yeah,
that
I
you've
mean, I
got,
see that a lot in agency. That's
yes,
usually the relationship in agency when you're working with really big companies. You've got the LXD or the instructional designer, and then yeah, you go to an art direction team, and then you go to the actual developer who puts it in. Sometimes you even have a script writer um, that does that as well. Um, which I'm glad that's not on here. A script. I guess communication skills in a weird way.
yeah,
Um,
kind of. And I think interestingly, it did strike me that in the what like skills that people want from an instructional designer, creative writing
mhm.
didn't didn't jump up the list. You're more likely to be required to have business acumen than be able to do creative writing.
You know what's
Um,
actually what? Hold on. Actually, you bring up something really interesting, which is that absolutely nowhere on here is creativity mentioned once,
and I think that
like
has
at
a lot to
all.
do with the perception. I
Yeah,
still don't think, on the whole, instructional design is considered to be a creative pursuit within the business environment. I'd like to think most of us consider ourselves a little bit creative.
yeah. I don't
Um,
think I would succeed without an element of creativity.
yeah, it's interesting, but also I wonder if businesses um, struggle with the. It's quite a broad term.
Mm,
Be creative. Like you would never get a brief
yeah,
inside a business, in my experience, that was like be creative because it would terrify managers as to what you were going to go do.
yeah.
I think actually Q's made an interesting point there. First of all, he's made a career out of being that waste of talent. Do you know what? As I was saying that, I did think if you kind of you do a lot of LMS stuff, but I think it's also fair to say you do a lot more than just administer the LMS.
Mm.
Um, but I think you're right with your second comment as well about companies post for an architect, but unfortunately they want a professional screwdriver. That is so true. Everyone
Yeah.
says they want someone to come in and really shake things up, change the way we do things, bring in fresh new ideas, and
Oh
you
my
get
god.
there and you run into the wall of, well, that's not how we do things here.
Oh,
You
that's
may have
triggering.
these skills, but no, just do it like this, please.
That's
Um,
so triggering. That's not even fair.
it's it's a frustrating experience, and I think a lot of people in the industry have experienced that. And I know we will probably touch on freelancing more later on, but I think that's a major cause of why people are moving so much to freelancing at the moment. Is that people are just fed up of dealing with that. There we are. We'll talk about Joey's tale. We'll call it in a
My god,
little
I
bit.
it's been a
Um,
month, y'all. It has been a month. This is what I get for drinking Manhattan IPAs en masse on the last episode.
absolutely.
I will
So
not be doing that again.
but yeah, so there's only for me there's two other things that I found really interesting. That was what are the top three things you consider when evaluating an instructional designer for a role? Um, no, I think there's
Yeah,
some
this was
really good
wild.
stuff here. The interview, the portfolio. It's good to see portfolio scoring like third place at 67. Yeah, 67%.
I feel like if this was last year, that would be at the bottom. I
I,
feel like
I
that's kind of a new thing.
I think so. I was a little disappointed to see professional experience at the top, if I'm
Really?
honest.
Okay.
Yeah.
What would yours been?
I would, if I'm honest, I would have put portfolio at the top.
Okay.
From purely from my perspective, hiring people in to sort of subcontract to and work with, I have very little interest in how long you've been doing it. I care about how good at it you are.
Mhm.
And I would argue that over the last year, I have worked with people who have been in L&D or instructional design for less than 2 years,
Mhm.
but are infinitely better at it than a lot of people that have been in the industry for 30 years and are very proud of the fact they've been in it for 30 years.
I think that's fair. I think that's a fair approach.
But on the flip side, I can also see why someone walking into an interview and saying, I've got 30 years of experience is going to play in their benefit. Um, I think that swing will take longer, but it is at least good to see portfolio coming up the ranks so quickly.
Mhm. I think I'm trying to think of my top. You might have actually sold me on portfolio there, though. Actually, I'm not gonna lie. But in the comment in the write-ins,
Mm,
there's one of them that says being able to self-manage, which is ultimately independence. Um, and that's actually really that's one of those things that has had to be that has been so crucial to every role, every ID role that I've ever had.
mm.
I'm liking that. I don't know if I put that in my top slot, but it might be in my top three.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that's a fair
because that's a
a fair
discipline
comment.
thing.
Oh yeah.
And I'm a notorious procrastinator. So that discipline's real important.
Mm.
I know it's interesting.
And I think in the
I'm
world of
glad
home
education
working,
is low.
yeah, I was. But then we go to the
Uh-oh.
next question. What's the minimum education that an applicant must have? Bachelor's degree. What the
In what?
actual heck? Um, I mean,
Ah,
first of all, even if it was in instructional design, what relevance does it have to ability? There
yeah.
are, once again, there are people with PhDs in learning theory, and then you
Mm.
see what they create and you think, wow, I would never sign that off to go into the world.
Yeah.
Um,
Mine's in graphic design. I should be making coffee for a career.
absolutely. Instead, we're here drinking beer, so yeah, maybe we'd be better off at Starbucks. But
You know what? Actually, you know what? The problem that I have with this, I think the question's bad. Sorry, Devlin. Sorry, Devlin. If you listen to this,
oh,
I still absolutely respect you. Um, but why is there no none? It's not that important to me. Like if I'm forced into these five choices, I don't know if I was forced into these five choices.
oh, that's true.
Um, given that associates isn't on here, that's weird to me. Um, so I wonder if this was one of those like you had to pick one of only five options.
Hmm. And I suppose at which point the second one is high school diploma. So would that be just kind of the completion of
Mm.
kind of like just
Basically,
standard school,
secondary.
basically?
Yeah, it's like you
'Cause
got the
yeah,
diploma,
okay.
which
Because
I would wonder if like GED is on that, which is testing into high school diploma.
okay. It's,
Which I
it's
mean
it's
that
quite different
we
in
can
the
do that
states,
here.
obviously. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
so
Oh,
interesting
I see.
there.
Luke's degree was in film production, so you should also be making coffee and talking about your script, hoping you get discovered. I feel yeah.
Well, I studied business management and personnel development. Um, so I should probably be working in HR, making sure someone doesn't sue us. I
I don't
don't
know.
know.
I'll be testing
That's
you. I mean,
it's somewhat pointless, to be perfectly honest.
you and I
Um,
are working together a little bit more, so I'll test to see how well that degree's been going.
it's largely wasted. So yeah, I don't know. That first of all flew in the face of the answer to the previous question to my mind, but I think you might be
Mhm.
right. It would be interesting to see if this is not a consideration to me would change that significantly. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I think God, that's so weighted. Like that which level of education would you prefer that IDs have when applying to a role? God, that's weighted.
because I was like, it's really tricky because I disagree with the push for almost like an anti university education approach. I don't think
Okay.
it's a waste. I think university education, higher education of any type, has massive value. But I do not think it actually makes you better necessarily at a specific job. I don't think an instructional designer is better at their job if they've got a PhD in instructional design versus someone who's just worked really hard, practiced,
Mm.
and developed a craft.
Right.
Um, the flip side of that is obviously if I go for surgery, I want to be flipping sure they've got all the correct letters after their name and before their name and whatever else they need. So there are spaces for it, and I think just that critical thinking education and that ability to research and consider and explore ideas isn't
Mhm.
really taught at lower levels.
Yeah,
Which, in fairness, is more of an indictment of general education than it is a support of higher education.
yeah.
So I think it has real value, but it's just not a, it's not going to get someone a job if I'm interviewing them. Certainly, what's going to get
No, and
someone a job is proven ability. Simple as that.
yeah. And I got two follow-ups to that because when I was in graphic design, and I'm loving Luke's comment. I do want to touch up on that because I think it's great.
Mm.
But when I was in graphic design, yeah, I had my degree, but I walked out with a portfolio. I don't have a degree in ID, but I'm wondering if, like, as a master's program, like, are there courses where you walk out with a portfolio? Like, I actually have something to show you that I did as part of my master's. I don't actually know.
I mean, generally speaking, like I don't know from an instructional design perspective because a lot of the instructional design higher education courses, be them master's degrees, this kind of thing, focus very much on writing about the theories and the models and things like that, and they don't really, they're not really like creating content
Right. Hmm.
in a
Like, no
workplace
project. Here's a
feel to it.
project brief. Here's a.
Not that
That's
I've seen, but similarly, please, if someone's out there watching, correct me.
Yeah, I'd
It
love
would
to
be
know.
it'd be really interesting actually. Maybe we'll try and reach out to people who have done some higher education specifically in the area of learning instructional design
Mm,
outside of the world of teaching to get an idea of what that looks like. Um,
yeah.
because equally, as much as I kind of said, oh, it doesn't matter, blah blah blah, there are some really awesome people out there who have gone down that route. Devlin Peck is a primary example. Cara
Mhm,
North, these people are awesome, and they've gone down that more perhaps more academically focused route in
mhm,
terms of learning about ID. So I don't think it does any damage, but equally, I don't think it's a winner
mm.
there and then.
Yeah.
Was there anything else you really wanted to touch on from this report?
Yeah, I want to talk really quickly about Luke's thing about that adaptability, basically ability to
Yeah.
learn new technology, and I think that's another thing that doesn't come up too often. Now, for an ID, if I'm trying to be an e-content developer at the same time, which is kind of the norm, that's definitely weighted pretty heavily, um, of being able to do that. But I still think as an ID, you kind of have to respect the technology at your disposal.
Mm.
Um, I just, if I want to do XYZ interactions, if I want people to learn in a certain way with certain metrics, I need to make sure that what the developers are using can handle that. Um, so I do kind of like the idea of having some sort of focus. I don't know if I'd put my top three, Luke, given what I think an ID job should be. But if I were to weigh this against what it actually is, I would probably have that. I'd probably have that up there. That ability to adapt, flexibility, all that stuff. Those words.
Absolutely, it's I think that's only ever going to increase.
Mhm.
Um, I think to an extent that's a shame because it moves a little bit. For me personally, it moves too much focus onto the tool, but I also see why, from a business perspective, it would be so
Mhm.
important.
Yeah.
Because most businesses are not in the position where they're going to hire a developer versus an instructional designer and then a design team to support them. They're going to want as much as possible for one person to do the lot, right?
Yep. So that's actually going to segue into something off this report and probably lead into my stuff. Let me
Go
see if I had
for it.
anything more. I didn't think I had anything more
Um,
on this one.
yeah,
Um,
shock horror storylines popular. Who knew?
yeah.
Captivate isn't. Uh, Camtasia quite popular. Um,
Yes. And we're going to talk about that because they got a new update and it's big and it's amazing. Shut up the world.
cool. But yeah, no, I
But no,
think
all right. So, good.
overall though, if you haven't seen it, go check out Devlin Peck's report. It's on his
Yep.
website. I'll pop a link in the description.
Yep. I
Everything
put
on
it in the
his site
chat
is
as well.
awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, he's
Cool.
cool. All right. So on the note of skills for IEDs, this is
Ooh.
I saw an article kind of in researching the market, and we'll talk about the market, what happened in 2020 and getting some actual news here. Um, but I saw an article from 2015 that was talking about IDs making 130,000 a year, and said, and it was literally like, do you want to just make 130,000 a year, getting away from freelancing and doing corporate work? And the argument that they made is that so many instructional designers are jumping into director positions. And it's,
Mm,
it's super common that they jump into director positions because they have all this knowledge of kind of the business acumen, ironically. Um, and I read it, and it's total crap. I agreed with zero of it. But I was hopeful. I was very hopeful about it. But it was kind of interesting. Like, I think that's what makes this difficult. I think if you were to look at an ID, maybe the way we marketed in 2015, where they really were they really were the man behind the curtain.
mm,
I think you could have gotten away with that assessment. I don't think in 2015 that would have been as terrible a direction to take. Of, yeah, you really are looking at the training program as a whole. You are really guiding that roadmap. That is really what your job is. I think over time that has evolved into, professional screwdriver, uh, as Keith says, and we're just the Swiss Army knife at this point. So those managerial skills and whatnot don't matter as much.
mm.
But it was a wild argument it was a wild thing to read from 2015 of, I don't know, maybe if I started it then and wasn't a terrible person, I had a lot to learn in 2015. Um, I don't know. What are your thoughts actually? You've been you've been in it for a couple of years. When it started, has the role of ID evolved so much that
I'm
the
not
like the
sure if
career path has changed?
evolved is the right term. It's changed. I think it's changed
Has been
significantly.
dumped on
Yeah, I
enough?
think if I'm honest, I think it has. And not entirely by external forces. I think L&D has done a lot broadly to damage itself and its credibility within the business world, especially over the last few years. Um, Shiny stuff syndrome has, in my experience, ruined entire departments that are just
Yeah.
viewed by businesses as wastes of money and time. Um, I think there's also been a lot of I don't know. There's I don't know. There seems to be a lot of IDs wanting to do things that have nothing to do with their job role. So I know we kind of discussed before about how L&D, in my opinion, doesn't drive the business anywhere. That's not L&D's job.
Mm.
L&D's job is to, well, support learning and development within the business so that people can do their job better. If you're setting the direction of the business, well, then what is your C-suite doing? That's their job, not
Yeah.
L&D's, not HR's. It's not even vaguely close to your responsibilities.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
I think more and more people have become obsessed with this idea that you have to be involved in everything in a business.
Mhm.
And I think actually to be a really great learning function, whether you're external and supporting in or whether you're internal, you've got to be willing to kind of say, hang on a minute, what's our role? Our role is to support people in getting better at what they do,
Yeah.
not
I
to
think,
change what they do.
yeah, the way that I've had to present it to people, especially because I've worked so much big data and marketing, is that I'm basically, we're not generating revenue, we're protecting it. That's kind of the way I've
Mm,
had to present
absolutely.
our team and what we do. Is I don't want my stuff to have a credit card attached with it. I want to have a renewal attached. That's what I
Mm,
want. I want people to be confident enough that they're not questioning how much time they're wasting doing frivolous things,
yeah.
and whether or not they're getting their value out of a product or out of a skill or out of whatever. And that tends to get a little bit of attention. And then I talk to their boss, and they say, well, how do we monetize this? And I'm like, you hire somebody cheaper who doesn't care.
Pretty much. Someone who will lie to you is effectively what you need at that
Yeah.
point. Where you go, oh
Same,
yeah,
like I said,
our training is going to make you money. Unless you're selling it, unless selling training is what your business does, training does not make you money. It's just
see,
not
like
how
I
it
said,
works.
bring it full circle. Rule number one of being an ID: don't be truthful about what you do.
Exactly. Lie through your teeth. Can you to a financial figure measure the ROI of this training? Absolutely. Not a problem.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, speaking about money and speaking about
Yes.
times long past, All right, let's get into some numbers. Let's get into some news. Let's have some fun. Let's talk some
Mm-hmm.
spice. And it's going to start with an article from 2017, just because it's funny. It's real funny. So again, going back to the days of, what was the industry like in 2016, I came across, as I wanted to look at kind of what happened in 2020. I was actually really looking for what happened in Q1 of 2021. Like, where did the learning industry go? Those numbers just aren't out yet. At least not for free. It's just, those are expensive.
Yeah.
But what I ended up finding is like what actually happened to L&D in 2020. I found a ton of things of what happened to L&D in 2020 as far as their market and their market share and the money and revenue and whatnot, as well as the different. But in my research, I discovered an article on good old LinkedIn in 2017. Here's the headline: Is e-learning really dead? Is instructional design dying with it? Question. The argument. Let's read this out. I'm gonna read this specific one. And I'll tell you how it just gets worse. The worldwide 5-year compound annual growth rate, so CAGR, in case I bring it up, for e-learning is distinctly negative at minus 6.4. This is from 2016. So we're looking at 2016, 2015. Global revenues for self-paced courseware are dropping fast. In 2016, revenue for e-learning reached $46.6 billion, down slightly from 46.9 in 2015. By 2021, worldwide revenues for e-learning will plummet to $33.4 billion. I'll tell you what the industry's worth in just a sec. Sorry. This report provides a status of the current e-learning industry, and it doesn't look healthy. This report was so bad that the company that did the report and that had been doing report stopped doing reports, thinking it was just dead. That's how bleak it looked. That's how much they were just like, and we're done. What everyone ultimately led to, instead of e-learning, and there was an element of e-learning in this, but they looked pretty heavily at, for some reason, they looked kind of heavily at China and what they were doing, because the US was in a weird, stupid flux. But they did a bunch of research and said that there's a lot of demand for instructor-led, you're gonna love this one, mobile, or a hybrid of the two. That's where the industry was leaning, was instructor, mobile, or leaner, or something else. So that self-paced e-learning, micro-learning, go to a site, find a bunch of things, wasn't a thing. Super dead. Super dead. Where's my big number? Let me find my big number. In the meantime, while I find that, I will give you an opportunity to ask. I'll give you an opportunity to guess what the actual number is. What is, how much, how, God, why can't I answer this?
What's
the revenue
the current
of
market?
What is
value?
the current market? What is the current market value of e-learning? Thank you.
Got answers in the comments, guys. What do you think that is?
What do you think? Because I need to.
It's got
I've got a bunch of them open, so.
I mean, it's got. What was it? So what was it then?
Oh,
It was in the 30s then, back in 2015.
It was supposed to be $33.1 billion in 2021.
I reckon we must be somewhere between 75 and 100. I would hope.
Okay.
Probably going to be massively lower than that.
Okay.
But
I know we have a little of a delay, so I want to see if anybody takes a crack at it. I will tell you that you are wrong.
Ooh.
The number's busted. The number is really impressive. But I'm gonna give it like
cool.
I'm gonna give it like 10 more seconds.
Yeah. Just to say, yes, mobile was totally going to revolutionize the way people learn. Like all 6 people in the world that currently actively do e-learning on their mobiles must be thrilled. It's oh, here we go. We've got Luke coming in with 80 billion.
80 billion. All right. I'm gonna read this. Global e-learning market is expected to double in size from $250 billion in 2020
Whoa.
to $499.1 by 2027. 250 billion 2020.
Well, it's
Market saw
practically dead, isn't it? That's the tiny industry at that point.
Yeah, why is my house not paid? Market saw historic growth of 36.3% during 2020. Projected to grow 10% each year through 2027. Naturally, COVID did a lot of that. Did a heck of a lot of that. But yeah.
But think if it was already sad at that size, clearly the trend was not going down. Let's be honest. I think, and it's interesting when you're talking about that's what was being predicted, but it's clearly being predicted on that everything's going to go mobile argument, which
Mhm.
even at the time, never quite rang true. The idea, even just the practicality of work learning is going to go mobile. Well, how many workplaces do you know that give out mobile phones? All the jobs I've ever
Only for a
had, one
specific
of them.
role.
Exactly. It's role specific, and the vast majority of learners in any given business aren't being given mobile phones. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
So it was never going to catch on. Because then there was people will be able to do it on their own phones. It's like ability is not the issue there. No one's going to want. Why would I let my workplace take over my mobile phone? It was never going to fly.
So I think what got interesting. So in 2017, so when this thing was released, when this thing mattered, approximately 77% of US corporations used online learning. 2020, that number is 98%, which is also nuts. I mean, that's US, that's not global. But still, like, we cover a lot of ground.
And let's face it, it's pretty rare now to come across a business that has no digital learning offering. Like, absolutely nothing. Like, generally speaking, it's very, very small businesses now that have nothing. They're kind of three and a half employees and a cat. Fair enough, they probably don't need to author too much e-learning. But even then, they're the kind of smaller businesses now that are buying in digital content, because good content is now available to just buy in.
It's going to bite you a little bit. It's going to make you feel a little sad. I'm going to read off some more numbers. So the MOOC, the MOOC, massive open online course, 5.16 billion. That's its market. That's your Udemy's, guys.
Yeah.
That's maybe I do want to make a course.
Get your slice of that couple of billion in there.
Here's one that might make you a little sad though.
Oh dear.
2015 mobile, about 8 bill. That's Luna, by the way.
Hey.
Yeah, she's
interested.
Nah, she's not. The dog is very interested though. But anyway, 2015 mobile learning, 8 bill. End of 2019, 27.
I mean,
be sad.
That is like pretty much every penny of that is wasted money. Yes.
That's right. There's nothing that says whether or not that's good. The training is good.
And this is it. And I think my biggest argument with the whole mobile thing is just why. And I've yet to be given a meaningful answer other than because technology is there. Yeah, but that's fine. It's good to know there's a market for all the people that were telling me at conferences I had to get into mobile right where I'd be left behind by the industry. So it's good to see they're surviving. Never mind.
So let's see. They did a e-learning increases. So I guess they did some other things. So I guess the big use case that has been around has been IBM. So IBM apparently took this on, and I looked at a couple different ones. I've got a few of them up on my screen right now. The big thing that IBM in the studies were able to confidently say that when they switched over to e-learning, they saved $200 million.
Wow.
And I think that probably sparked something. They also show, and then they just did like basic numbers, increased retention from 25 to 60%, increase of income for 42% for US organizations, 218% higher revenue per employee, for those companies had comprehensive training programs. That was a survey of 2,500 companies. Yeah, we're good, guys.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at. We're
Like, as
doing
far
well.
as yeah, as far as the state of the industry goes, that's very, very positive at the moment. I'd certainly
Yeah,
rather be an ID than a car manufacturer. Let's look at it that way. Um,
yeah.
yeah, struggling a bit,
Um,
but yeah, no, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because there were loads of debates at instructional design conferences, certainly here in the UK, a couple of years ago, about is there a future for instructional designers? Is the world moving on? Is technology replacing the human element to it? And I think the one thing that really shows is that the market really, if it's increasing in value at that kind of pace, it shows that the human element is still very much required.
mhm.
Um, because you're not generating the content that drives growth like that by shoving stuff into an AI engine and uploading the junk that comes out the other end.
I think
That's
this also,
you know.
yeah. I think you're spot on, and I think COVID just proved that a little bit more
Mm.
as well. Um, I mean, if anything, it proved that we are not ready for not humans. Um,
Do you think? It's like,
all
oh,
right,
we
so
can program them for
let's do another
almost
guessing game.
anything. Oh, go for it.
Let's do another guessing game. These are fun. Let's talk specifically about Udemy. End of March 2020. So, hello COVID. Um, from the previous month, from February 2020, Udemy saw an increase in student enrollments. What percentage of an increase do you think they had
Oh,
from February to March 2020?
February to March 2020. So that was literally right at the start.
Everything's getting locked down.
I'm gonna
And feel free to play
say,
along in the
I,
comments.
yeah, absolutely get involved. If you get it like amazingly right, we might even send you a prize. Who knows? Um,
I will definitely send you a prize.
if Can you share link? Absolutely, Luke. We will pop links in the stats after people have answered the questions. Uh,
Yes, not so you can
otherwise, that's
cheat.
just cheating. Do you know what? I'm gonna really go for it and say I think it went up like 800%.
Okay,
I'm
be
gonna
ambitious.
really push it. Um, we're doing PIR rules.
I don't know what PIR is.
Sorry, Q. You're too smart for us. I've got no idea what PIR rules are. Um,
All right. Well, I googled PIR, and we're apparently doing the Portland International Raceway rules. I'm pretty sure that's not what it is. Um,
Probably not. If so,
okay, so yours is
1%.
800.
Oh, I see. Right, Price is Right rules. Okay. So if you
Price
get
is Right.
under, but you're closer, you win. But if you go over, you're out. In which case, 1%
So
is the best thing to guess if you have no concept for what the right answer is. Fair enough. Yeah, no,
no.
that's a well played game there, sir. Uh,
Also no. All right, so you go 800.
I've gone
Um,
800.
gone 800. A little high. By a little I mean a lot high. A lot high. But still impressive. 425.
425. Oh, okay.
425%. Um, 80% increase of actual for just the business side. They saw an 80% increase of consumption of content just for the business stuff.
See,
Um,
that's more interesting to me because the enrollments on Udemy, a lot of people enroll and never do a course.
yeah. Thinkific, 368% growth in course creation the
Ooh.
last 2 weeks of March 2020. Also, I thought that was kind of interesting.
That doesn't
Uh,
surprise me so much, I got to say, because that platform is blooming awesome.
I'll have to check it out.
I've been working on a client some client work that's going to go on there. It's one of those few sites where it can properly support like SCORM and XAPI reporting. It's like working in a well-designed LMS, but with all the website functionality built in and sales functionality built in. Fantastic.
I'll have to check it out. That's my investment. Speaking of investments we're making, my personal investment is tools and learning more stuff outside of the normal since I'm playing in freelance space.
Mm.
Um, sorry, we're in burp mode. My apologies. Another thing I thought that was interesting. This is just also just a US number, but I thought this was actually kind of cool. And this will be a good segue into freelance stuff.
Mm.
Um, is temporary staffing went up, is gone up 11% so far in 2021, which is actually beating out pre-pandemic levels, which is kind of cool. But the biggest increase is specifically in education, in temporary education staffing for schools and whatnot. That rocked about, like, it was a decline. It was actually a decline during COVID, but now it's like shooting up about 25%, which is
Yeah,
kind of
that makes
neat.
sense.
And like that could also surpass pre-pandemic, which is cool. I dig that. Um,
That is, yeah,
so
that is very cool. Actually, I'm glad to see that happening. Um, yeah, I think it I think it'll be interesting. I think this has almost become the, certainly for me, I very much view 2020 as the year of the freelance ID and e-learning developer. And I think it, for the first time, we were not the, oh well, we haven't got enough capacity, so we'll get someone to come in and just do the job and then go away again. But we became a resource that actually allowed businesses is that's not a word.
screwdriver.
Um,
That's where
yeah,
we're at in our
exactly.
day.
Um, cool. But it allowed businesses to pivot quickly by saying, we don't have a skill set, quickly, let's bring it in for 6 weeks, or to do this
Mm,
job, or to create what we need. And I
yeah,
think I would love to say that that is now how L&D will continue to evolve. I would love to see it get to the point where we start viewing these as brilliant skill sets that, rather than you needing to have forever within your business, you free them up. And so it
yeah.
moves into a more freelancer heavy industry, and businesses pull on specific people when they're required.
I
Um,
think it'll be nice to have companies not have to try to figure out what an instructional designer does. They
yeah,
just be like, "What do we need? Oh, we're just gonna get one of them for 6 weeks.
yeah,
Call it
this is
good."
it. And I think it would be better for the industry as well, because then people wouldn't just sit in one place for years and years and years and become so, ID is how we do it here. I think
Yeah,
certainly for me, going freelance gave me the kind of breadth of view of the industry that I would never have got had I just stayed working for one business.
yeah,
Um,
and I'm kind of learning that myself. So, to the community, the news about me is I ended at the beginning of this month, um, and as soon as I put that out there, I put it out on LinkedIn, like, "Hey, I'm open to work," and what. I got flooded with freelance. I had to turn away stuff. It just came out of nowhere. It was really cool. It was a ton of content development. I got a little LXD, a little ID stuff mixed in there, but um, yeah, it was just kind of overwhelming. And I've been pondering. So feel free to throw in the comments because I know the chat's on a delay. Like if you've been doing the freelance life and if you've just been sold on it, I'm starting to understand. But I spent an entire decade. I mean, my entire career has been doing full-time stuff. But yeah, the freelance has been kind of incredible lately. I've got some really cool clients that I don't necessarily know if I can share, so I won't. Um,
yeah,
not
so
to say I don't know. Can we share the fun stuff?
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So
All right.
flip side of that is I've got an actual job again. In addition
Yeah.
to my freelancing business, I've taken a job working with the awesome team at I Am Learning, where we do exactly what I was just saying. We source ourselves fantastic freelancers to create content with us. We have our I Am Creative community, um, of which Joey's doing some work with us.
Yep. Yep. So,
Um,
and it's been really fun. I think the biggest thing that has been like really getting me is that there's an element of fun. Like I can kind of find the fun projects.
mm,
And that's not something I gave a lot of credit to because like I'm so used to freelance, I'm so used to like the rounder's life of like it's not really fun because you're doing it for work. But like you never know if it's going to stay consistent or not. That's the
yep.
big fear. Um, but yeah, I'm getting on these projects that are actually just like a lot of fun to be a part of. And I'm like, cool. And when I get tired of this and I don't have to think about the corporate politics behind that company, I just get to do the cool thing and then leave. Um, Neat. And that's been really attractive. That's actually been, if anything, it's been helping my motivation. Especially given my journey as very much the disruptor in the industry, kind of going back to the full-time stuff and
Mm.
whatnot. I'm very much a disruptor when I go, and we were joking about we want those fresh eyes, and then you get in and like, well, we wanted those fresh eyes to glorify what we were already doing. I am not that guy, very much
Yeah.
not that person. So after a decade of, I'm not going to say failure, but we'll just call it learning. That's the PC way to say failure.
Mm.
Um, Kind of doing a lot of the freelance stuff has kind of invigorated my kind of love for the industry and love for the work again, and I'm hoping that continues.
I mean, I had
And
exactly the
that's
same
happened
thing.
in a short time.
Yeah. It's funny, I was chatting to someone I used to work with the other day, and I said it's sort of 3 months before I went freelance is the closest I've ever been after pursuing it for years to just saying, nah, this industry's not for me. I've had enough. Just because
It's close.
working internally within businesses that just did not want to move forwards
Mhm.
is crushing.
Yeah,
And
I was
it
I was
drains
looking
your
at
love
marketing
of the job.
jobs again.
Yeah.
I was back
Whereas
to look. I was back to look at my email marketing, email support, campaign manager. I was looking back. I
yeah.
was looking back at that stuff.
Whereas I think the
Um,
day you realise you can look at a project and say, nope, don't like that, I'm not going to do it. All that pressure's gone. I'm
yeah,
not going to say as a freelancer you can always do that. Of course you can't. Everyone's got
right.
bills to pay. But
Hmm.
for me, I kind of made that choice going into freelance. To my mind, you can do one or two things, really. You can go into freelance on the basis of I'm going to make as much money as I physically can. I'm going to bill out for the highest day rates, regardless of what the job is. And that's perfectly valid. For some people, that's what you want to do. For me, I
Hmm.
went into it and said, I am never again going to be in the position where I say, well, it's not a good product, but it's done. I was fed up of doing that. I was fed up of
Mm,
constantly selling out what I knew was the right way to do it for the way that the business wanted to.
yeah.
Um, so for me, that was my reasoning for going into freelancing. But I think everyone has to find their own way. But I think there's never been a better time to do it.
One of the things I'm excited to kind of vet is the fresh eyes perspective as a freelancer. And the
Mm.
only thing that I'm going to go with this on is, and I get to say it because I'll put it on my LinkedIn at some point, is I'm working with the state of Colorado um, as one of the things that I'm doing. Oof. And I came in with a heck of a lot of experience, and they've been a lot more open to kind of like listening to the unique things and like, here's how I've done it out in the world. And I don't know if it's because, I don't know if there's maybe some sort of pressure that's off of them to listen to that stuff, knowing that
Mm.
I might not be around that long and they just don't have to take it. As opposed to if I'm permanent doing that right out of the gate, you're like, oh, this is going to be a problem for years. I'm excited to kind of vet that a little bit in those instances where it's kind of welcomed. It's not like I came in and said, oh, look at all the things you're doing wrong.
Yeah.
Um, that's awful. But like in those jobs, in those freelancing jobs, we're like, hey, we're not entirely sure what we're doing. That's kind of why we're bringing you on board. I'm kind of curious to see how much more receptive they are to those fresh ideas, knowing that I'm a temporary problem if I become a problem.
Yeah, I mean that's certainly what I found is that there is even when I was full time in a business, I got frustrated with the fact that when they bring in a contractor or a freelancer, they would take their advice before someone who was internals,
Hmm.
because there's a perceived, I don't know, like a perceived improvement in quality when dealing with external people.
Like I'm the
Um,
ringer. They brought in
yeah,
a ringer.
that's it. But I think there's a business perception of they're bringing in an expert, whereas their employees just do it for a living day in day out. You could call them experts, but you shouldn't.
Hmm.
Um, and
Yeah,
I
I mean,
think
and they
that
could
is a
also
thing.
be thwarted by those internal, corporate
Mhm.
politics and things like that, and they could be
Yes,
influenced by that, and I can't.
yeah. But I think as a freelancer, you come in and you don't have any of that. You haven't got the baggage of, oh, well, the last time this was said, she said this and he said that, and this reaction happened and whatever. You just come in and you just come from a point of, how can we do a great product?
Yeah. I tell you
And
what, if that's the way, if that's what I can get, if that's what I can look forward to a bunch. I think I just sold myself. I think I sold myself on freelancing. I'm really tired of being told, "Hey, we love what you're doing. Please leave permanently."
Well, I mean, on the flip side of that, that is freelancing. Um, but at least you
Yeah,
know
but I
it's going to
know that.
happen. Yeah,
I know the game
absolutely.
that's being played that time,
Yeah.
as opposed to, I'm so glad I made an impact. This is going to be great for like raises, and this is going to be great for my movement in the company longer term. I'm not going to be as ashamed. I'm not going to be like, oh, well, I did a good 3 months. Off I
And
go into the sunset.
yeah, and I think that's it. Being a freelancer, certainly for me, removed the element of concern for progression. I wasn't
Mhm.
thinking about who do I need to, be friends with, who do I need to network with in the business, who do I not need to rub up the wrong way if I want to progress. I could just go in and say, this is going to be awesome, here's what we're going to do. And that's that. And there
Yeah,
were no other considerations. And the rest of it, if they don't like it, they can say, no, we don't like it, and that's fine. It's not
yeah.
actually my problem in the long term. And
Mhm.
if they say, oh, actually, this isn't working out, or we want to go a different route, you can walk away without any great concern.
Yeah.
And I think that that's incredibly freeing um, in terms of experience.
I'm
So we're
excited to get a feel for it.
yeah, I think it's good times, good times. So I
Uh,
know we've got some tech updates, and we want to do our kind of stuff of the month, and we're already coming up to like an hour and 20 minutes,
yeah, what in the
which is
world? We do
mad.
that.
So we'll we'll move
I
on from
think
the
I'm happy. I'm
freelancing
happy
world.
before we I think we did. I thought we brought a lot of good stuff. I'm proud of this episode. I'm happy with
Yes,
this.
I think it's good. We've talked
Um,
about numbers and reports. We sounded all professional for a little bit. Um,
yes, exactly.
so
I
I know
looked at
you've got some technology updates for us.
not a ton, but there's one big one that matters. So we'll get the easy one out of the way. Captivate's not doing anything. Um,
No update
shocker.
from Captivate this month. My goodness.
You know what's even worse is it's impossible to find the release notes. Like it's almost like they don't want you to find that they're not doing. Well, it's also like they don't want you to find what they're doing. Naturally, they don't want you to find that
Mm,
they're not doing anything.
bloody
Um,
it.
but if you search for Captivate release notes, it's all over the map what you get. Um, it
Yeah.
frustrates me. Adobe, please be better, or release 2021. That's going to shake the whole thing because I can't get anybody to be a second confirmation on this, which means I can't get the developer from Adobe to say yes, we are changing everything.
Have they disappeared? Have they just suddenly vanished as they never existed?
Yeah, right, maybe. Um, and a
Oh dear.
flash of smoke to give me something to do for 2 days. Um, thanks, thanks. All right, so storyline had a couple things. Nothing really major. So there's a whole lot of hot fixing. But apparently, one of the other things is that they've made it easier to upload storyline of review if you've got like a corporate firewall. Apparently, that was an issue if you worked in a
Massively so.
company.
Yeah.
So they have given you an opportunity to manually upload a storyline file into review now, as opposed to going through the button that created
Yep.
problems. So that's kind of cool. Fan of that. Um, Outside of that, more fixes, a couple enhancements here and there, but
They
nothing
got a
like
lot more
major.
fixes to do. It's fine. They can just keep fixing for a while. I don't need any
Yeah,
more functionality at this point. Just fix what you've already made.
yeah. I mean, if you were with us last time, I let you know that whatever they have coming out in August is going to be massive enough that it is a required update on everyone. So I assume that you're not going to see anything major, and it's all going to come out in August.
Yeah.
Which is code for it's probably going to suck in August. And storyline's probably going to be better in October when they hotfix everything.
Just book the
Uh,
month off. Just forget about development.
yeah, like I'm going to keep looking at their release notes, and if I keep seeing these 3 week release cycles where they're actually releasing new content, I'm going
Mm,
to start getting discouraged.
it's a bit
Because
worrying,
that
isn't it?
means that those are resources that are not doing testing, that are not playing in staging environments. They're
Yeah.
still putting focus on new stuff, and I would rather them not and test a big release. And I get to say that with 10 years of instructional design and 15 years working in product applications. Don't do that. Test your stuff.
Yeah.
I don't want to test your stuff. I want to pay for your stuff and have it work.
Either that or start giving me money back at the end of the year for all the faults I report. I've always thought that would
Exactly.
be nice. Although I think Storyline would just go out of business. Um, that's,
Wasn't it Mike? Wasn't it? I thought it was like Google or Microsoft actually had like the bug bounty.
mm. A
I
lot of
forgot
big
who.
tech companies do. If you find a sufficient, like a security gap or a bug and
Yeah,
those kinds of things, they'll pay significant sums of money for it. But
yeah,
again, I think if Articulate started doing that, they would be bankrupt within a week.
yeah,
It's
probably. Now that I've been doing a lot more storyline work, I'm like, oh, there are a lot of things I remember I don't like about storyline.
yeah,
Please
but
understand how text works.
yeah,
Text formatting. Come on, it should not be that hard.
no,
Just
it's the typical example of why do you use Storyline? Because there is not an alternative that is viable. That's it.
just
That is the only reason.
can I just get tracking kerning letting? Like, I don't know why they change it.
Yeah.
Like they change it randomly. Control over it. Okay, I'm not gonna complain about storyline because
Yes.
I want them to sponsor us. Um, so on that note, let's talk about Camtasia. Oops. Sorry. All right, here's the big one. Here's the big one to end the day. Well, to end my part of the day, to end the news of the day, the tech news of the day. We'll do resources. Um, Camtasia 2021 is out. I've gotten the opportunity to play with it. It's fantastic. There's a lot of new quality things, and there's a lot of quality of life. And oh man, the quality of life is good. 2020 was great because it introduced a lot of branding stuff. So you got your themes and you got your favorites that you can export out and share with team members. Money. Um, as far as the way that Camtasia 2021 has as far as project management, one, you can do standalone projects. So if you're working in Camtasia, if you do a recording, it has its own magic Camtasia folder that you have to go find what you recorded
Yeah.
and deal with that. You don't have to worry about that anymore. You can create a standalone project that will move every asset into it. So you can just box it up and share it with people.
That's cool.
That's awesome. That saves a ton of time. Um, which I'm super excited about. You can also do they've also made it so if you do, I don't know if you've ever worked in like with library, like creating your own library assets.
Hmm.
Um, so if you create your own library assets, you've got like text, you've got images, and then you can group them all together so that way you can move them around as one thing. So what they've done is they will actually, if you do a group, they will analyze the assets in that group and give you fill in the blank over in the properties. So as opposed to having to go find the layer in a group of like 15, 20, it will just give you a list of the text assets and you just have to type and you go and you're done.
That's very cool.
Um, it's so easy to deal with. Um, and yeah, they do a pretty good job. The last one as far as quality of life is proxy editing. I'm so happy for this. So if we do a long video, you do a long video, you do a long recording, it's like 15, 20 minutes long. That file is monstrous. But let's say that you have a ton of work to do on it. So I've got a lot of annotations, I've got a lot of effects and graphics. It's processing the big video while it's doing all the little effects. So it's very hard to maybe see things in real time and get previews and whatnot. So you can now actually create a proxy version that is a compressed version of the video that you can use as an editing tool. So that way you can, you're not fighting with wait 5 seconds to load 4 frames. Um, it's real good. It's real good. I'm a fan of that. Tons of quality updates. So there's a lot more effects. There's a motion blur effect now. I didn't realize how much I
That's
like the
quite
motion blur
cool.
effect until I played around with it. And it's really subtle. Like, here's my hand that's moving, but the blur gives you kind of that quick blur. Like you can probably see it. So it looks like it's moving at the speed of not this. Really just good enough. I like it.
That's cool.
Um, they have color lookup tables now.
Ooh.
It's just more video editing. It's not for you
Mm.
trainers. This means nothing to you. But for me as a video editor, being able to do a color lookup table and say, all right, this is what I recorded, and I want to have kind of greens be, greener, richer, or bluer. Like, white balancing was an issue, so all my whites are kind of orange, which usually what
Yeah.
happens when you're outside or inside. You can do lookup tables to make that easier to manage, and get much crisper. Get much crisper footage. It's also you get like this really cool black and white footage with like just the green shows or something like that. It's pretty neat. Um,
Yeah.
they have fixed their track matting, so it's not as insane. So now I can do layering. So if I have text that I want to take on the visuals of the layer under it, I can do that with just the click of a button. It's really easy. It doesn't apply the whole layer. Um, Tons of really cool transitions. Any behavior is now toggleable. So if you had a behavior on something and you didn't want to see how it looked, you originally had to remove the behavior and put it back. Now I can just hit the toggle button and then we're
That's cool.
done. Um, and then the last thing that I'm going to mention, because it's my favorite thing in this dang update, is audio emphasis automatically. And what I mean by that is if you are doing a video with um, background music and
Mm.
you are talking over it, you can pick your talk track to be emphasized audio and it will automatically dim down the audio under it, as opposed to having to manually do that with the worst anchoring system ever. Camtasia, please fix it. It's real bad.
Do you know
So
what?
yeah, it's so good. It saves
Yeah.
so much time.
There's a lot of features there that obviously, like things like automated audio ducking, things like that, they've been very common for a long time in video
Mhm.
production software. But it's
Yes.
really good to see those moving over to tools like Camtasia, like proper e-learning authoring tools. For a
Yeah,
long
I
time,
think
I've said the tool that we're missing is the tool that brings all this stuff together. I want a
Mhm.
tool where I can build custom interactions, do video editing, not light touch video editing, proper production video editing, and
Yeah.
produce motion graphics all in one bit of software. There is no
Yeah.
reason that cannot be made, but
Mhm.
no one's done it.
Yeah, and
Um,
TechSmith is starting to get there. I'm starting to like the
yeah.
journey that they're having and that they're taking. Camtasia 9 was just there. It was neat.
Mm,
Camtasia 2018 introduced behaviors and that really kind of crisp professional quality animation that was very
yeah.
easy to do, but everything else was limiting. 2020 was project management and being able to share, like, as a trainer, as somebody who does not work alone, being able to do a whole bunch of fantastic things so that way it's easy to share those assets. And now in 2021, we're starting to see, let's actually work on the video quality piece, which was a criticism I had ages ago.
Yeah.
um I like this direction. I like what I'm seeing. I hope that they do a little bit more. I hope that 2022 or 3 or whatever they do is fine tuning. I would love to see some fine tuning tools. I would love to do some channel, like I would love to be able to do some channel mapping and channel adjustments.
Mm,
I would love to do like some levels. I would love their contrast and saturation to not be one slider that starts in the worst
mm,
possible moment. There's worst possible place on the bar. The
mm.
second that you add those, like if you ever use the color adjustment, it will give you the worst possible color adjustments as a default, and you have to
Right. Yeah.
manually move them back to what normal is. Um,
Oh dear.
it's rough. Like I would love to see control over highlights and shadows. I would love to see white balance. Give me a
Mm.
white balance. Um,
I
there's a
think,
lot of things that are missing,
yeah.
but
And I think as a tool that builds, let's face it, it builds video pretty highly, is what it
mhm.
does. It's going to be important. Um, but it's all steps in the right direction, which is really great to see.
I've been impressed. I've been impressed.
Does sound very good.
So
I
that's
mean,
what happens for tech updates. As always, if there is a tool that I'm not covering, which is, all of them except for 3, um, that is doing something cool, please let me know and I'd be more than happy to cover it. I'll probably try to do a little bit more as I get more invested in things. Um, but yeah, that's what I've got.
yeah, I mean, in terms of tech, this month the only thing from me is Black Magic users out there, whether it's cameras or software. We've got Gen 5 color coming in, which is stunning. And we've also, that kind of coincides with the mass launch of the 6K Pro Pocket cinema camera. Um, Very exciting bit of kit. I'm looking forward to getting my hands
Nice.
on that. That might have to be a whole video on the channel in of itself for those of us who are video gear junkies.
Yeah.
But with that, let's move on to resources of the month. And my resource for this month actually is currently being created by Luke. Luke, who's been in the
Yeah.
chat during today's session. So Luke's currently putting together a totally free online introductory course to my favorite authoring tool, the Evolve authoring tool. So Evolve, for those who don't know, is based on the Adapt framework, but really does elevate it with things like it has a logic system behind it. It introduces more manual variables, triggers, things like that. Gives it a lovely user interface that the Adapt framework does not have. Um,
Hmm.
Also, it's entirely browser based. And from a I'm just getting into instructional design perspective, you can subscribe on a month by month basis to the authoring tool at a
Nice.
cost of just £35 a month, which I think is about $40 ish.
Something like that.
Yeah, so it is a massively low cost authoring tool compared to the storylines of the world as well. Um, on top of that being adapt based, it's HTML5, fully responsive, truly rapid in its authoring approach. But unlike the likes of Rise, because it's adapt based, you have access to all the visual settings. You can change just about everything. It's blooming fantastic. Um, Loads of functionality. I would really recommend checking the tool out, but primarily as well checking out Luke's course. I know it's currently undergoing completion, and I'll post links once it's live. But you
Mhm.
can find Luke Westwood on LinkedIn. He's posting about it regularly. And the
Nice.
course is really excitingly, from my perspective, looking at how you can utilize the free trial. I think I want to say it's like 45 days they give you.
Wow.
Um, this is it. It's a decent free trial, and that's long enough if you're new to the industry to create some portfolio pieces and get them exported.
Nice.
When we talk about how do I get a portfolio without spending money, you utilize free trials. Um, and Luke's thanking us there for the shout out. But it's well worth it. I think the fact that you're taking the time to create a course and you're giving it out for free.
That's nuts.
Um,
That's awesome.
that's 21 days trial. There we go. I was being
21
over the
days.
top, but 21 days is long enough, still long enough to
Yeah.
create several courses on a tool like Evolve, um, and get your portfolio out there. And even then, even if you can't get it done in 21 days, it's 35 quid. If you're not willing to invest £35 in your new career that you desperately want, you probably don't want it that much. Um, if I'm honest. But yeah, so that's my shout out in terms of resource this month. Any resources from you, Joey?
So I'm gonna go off of the learning spectrum because I've had a couple
Ooh.
conversations. I have had more than I expected this last month of now that I'm getting my feet wet in content development, I'm looking at making a machine that can handle it. And a little bit of computer building and a little bit of technology accessories and whatnot. Um, so for those of you who are probably new to that space, I'm gonna give a shout out to Newegg, and that's gonna be my fun little resource. Tom knows it very well. So if you are, if you're kind of like, hey, I'm looking at building computer accessories and whatnot, Newegg is like the place to go. They have just about everything. It is incredibly cheap. And like I said, I've had a lot of conversations of I'm looking at building a rig. Absolutely worth checking out. I think it's also important to say nowadays when it comes to tech, if you are looking to kind of do upgrades, if you are really trying to build out this this blockchain nonsense is really putting a lot of pressure on like hard drives sales and processors and whatnot. So if you are looking at building, I'd jump on it sooner rather than later, just because everybody thinks Dogecoin is a thing. So they're all buying up hard drives right now in order to make that happen. Also, some tech news. I'm about to pop this bad boy in, Tom. It's my
Ooh.
first. It's my first It's my first SSD because my computer's running a little slow right now because I'm doing a lot more production work. Um, so this should help. But
Okay, if I wasn't such a terrible singer, I'd be bursting into a rendition of A Whole New World from Aladdin for you right now. It's
I'm excited. I'm currently moving things off onto a hard drive so that way I
yeah,
can move that way I can get this bad boy loaded this weekend.
nice.
It's on my list of things to do. But yes, great accessories and whatnot if you're looking to kind of upgrade if your computer's running slow, if you have taken advantage of the freelance stuff and you are just it's just grinding away. Keep it simple. Let's go to newegg.com. They're freaking awesome. Like I said, not a training resource. I'm sorry. I spent a lot of time doing the marketing update stuff.
No, in fairness, I think it's a solid thing. It's a question that keeps coming up. Like regularly, I see on LinkedIn and community sites, I'm an ID. I need a new PC. What should I do?
Mhm.
And I'm, as you know, I'm a big proponent for build it yourself.
Yep.
First of all, it's fun. Learn something. It's exciting,
It's kind of,
but also it's a key component to what you do for a living. So
yes.
knowing how it's been put together, how to upgrade it, and how to fix it, it's really quite handy.
And it's
Um,
cheaper long term. My computer
oh
was
yeah,
running slow. I spent $200 on a two terabyte state drive as opposed to $800 on a whole new rig.
yeah, this is it. It's although when you go to the enthusiast space, you hear a lot about us spending. I'm going to spend 1,800 quid on a graphics card, and I'm going to do a this, and I'm going to do a that. But you don't have those are the extremes.
Yeah.
You can build a great ID rig for 600-700 pounds. Um,
Mhm.
Not at the moment because the market has gone bananas. But
Yeah.
you know, you can, and the used market's great for that as well. So let us know in the comments, moving over the next couple of weeks, well, if you'd like a general video on putting together a an ID rig. That would be cool, or maybe some explorations of the rigs that we're running at the moment. That could
That'd be
be
cool.
an interesting video,
I
and what
wonder
we're
if
thinking of upgrading.
I forgot if I did it with I think I did with you on like the first episode of what were the minimum requirements for like the top L&D
Yeah,
software.
that's true. Tell you what,
Uh, yeah.
let's do this for next month. Let's put together on paper only. I'm not
Mhm.
not quite rolling in money. There's no sponsor yet. Um, but let's put together rigs that we think would suit
Ooh, that'd be
an
fun.
entry level instructional designer, maybe someone just
Okay.
getting in, the best what we would do. And do you know what? Let's then do the kind of, I don't know, the kind of the baller ID,
Oh my
the
gosh.
ID who's made it and has decided to invest in his rig,
All right,
or her
we'll
rig.
get those GeForce 3080s. Let's
30, I
go.
laugh at you and your 3080. Uh,
The Titan. I don't know what the big I don't know anymore. Whatever.
no, no,
We've got Intel i9s. There's a lot of I'm sure I can find stuff.
Intel's terrible. Right. Anyway, let's move on. That's going to be a fight otherwise, I'm sure. Right. Do you know what? We've been going for like an hour, nearly an hour and three quarters. It's been a really great show, though, actually. I want to say
Yeah.
thanks so much to everyone in the comments, Q and Luke, for really getting involved. I apologise to anyone on Twitch. I haven't even loaded Twitch. But yeah.
Sorry.
Hi,
I
everyone at
also
Twitch.
apologize to anybody who saw Decks and Drafts responding to things. I'm on the wrong account. I apologize, but that was me, everyone. Sorry.
Was entirely deliberate. He's just plugging his channel.
I am
Uh,
not trying to do that. I want to. I don't. I like keep those separate. I just totally forgot to change my profile.
no. But if you are interested in card games, it is the place to go. The videos are awesome. But
Thanks.
hey, we will speak to you guys again next month. In the meantime, as always, do get in touch if there's stuff you'd like to see on the channel, or of
Mhm.
course, just on the next ID update. Oh, and before I go, Joey saw just before we came online,
Yes.
ID update is getting t-shirts. Um, so if you just can't get enough of me and Joey once a month, now you can take our beautiful animated faces with you everywhere you go. So we'll have them by next month, but you can get them from the Spring site linked off the YouTube site. The t-shirt, if I'm honest, is a little bit of a joke. Long term, what's going to be going on there is we're working on a range of posters and desk mats covered in like ID stuff. Like we're doing a big A3 Bloom's taxonomy poster with all different objective words and things like that, and we're going to create lots of
Ooh,
cool stuff like that.
you're gonna use
We're,
all the shapes, all the shapes.
and all the colors.
Do a hexagon.
But we're also working on things like a pseudoscience poster for all under the title of "Shit L&D Says."
Yes.
So yeah, cue I'm not sure if I can show. Let me see if I can figure out how I would go about showing something.
I was just gonna take my camera and move it. Just turn it to the screen.
Yeah, we'll try that. Why not? Hang on one moment. I might be able to. I go there.
I have
This
no
is
clue what I'm
new.
gonna show.
Listings.
Spin this.
There he is. Wow, that's just like a really terrible. There we go. Let's go to there, and let's see if I can.
Oh, that's amazing. This shirt is interactive. Done.
Oh, so you can look at the colors. Yeah. So screen. I'm going to attempt to do a very quick.
I see darkness. Shirt's
Apologies
available in
for
black,
that.
everyone.
Apologies for that, everyone. What? Oh no. There's only one.
All of the assets.
Indeed, this is not quite going to plan.
All right.
Do you know what? It's because I have no concept of what I'm doing.
There we
go. Look at that.
Just taking the camera.
Like the lowest tech solution to solving this problem. But yeah, so that's available in loads of different colors. There's also like a jumper, and there's an IDT hooded jacket, which is really freaking warm. I got the prototype through the other day. But as I said, these really are just an initial couple of items so I could get things set up and mess around with. The site is more going to be about funny L&D related stuff. But it's coming from American McDowell's. I like that. Q's coming up with some ideas for us there, which is great. But yeah, so we've got Shit L&D Says posters coming. We've got Bloom's taxonomy posters coming. We're going to try and do desk mats and stuff like that in as well. If there's stuff you'd like to see, just let us know, and we'll find a way to make it happen. And I have to give another shout out once again for the designs for the cartoon characters to Sammy on LinkedIn, whose surname I've completely forgotten. But she's a phenomenal cartoon artist. Did a whole D&D related run on L&D concepts. Really great stuff. But in the meantime, I guess it's time to say thank you to all for tuning in for this, what has become an extended edition of the ID Update. But it is always a pleasure.
For sure. Thank you guys. Thank you so much, everyone.
All right. Have a good evening, all. And
Cheers.
now let's roll the outro. There's only one place for the breaking news in the world of instructional design. The ID Update with Tom and Joe. All the news you never knew you never needed. Only on IDT.